Hi, this is Tara. Welcome to Sky Gazing. Today we're studying the first chapter of the Genjo Koan. We're looking at the meaning of the title as sort of explained to us by Shohaku Okamura. And we're sort of breaking down the title because it is in itself very, very significant and has an interesting history. And various commentaries actually differ on the meaning of the title itself. We're sticking with Shohaku Okamura for this. So the expression Genjo Koan is used many times in the Shobogenzo, especially in the 75 chapter version. It appears 25 times in various chapters, and the Japanese word Genjo by itself is used more than 300 times in 63 chapters. Now, I have to say, I do speak a little Mandarin, but none at all of Japanese. So please excuse my pronunciations. But in this, it's necessary to break down the characters to the Japanese kanji, which is derived from the original root Chinese characters. So Genjo Koan is written as Gan, which means to appear, to show up, to be in the present moment. It can also be a noun for something unseen that can now be seen. So Shutsugan, for example, can refer to the appearance of the moon from behind the clouds. Okay, Ganzai means present moment, and Gandai means modern times. So Gan can be a kind of manifestation or actualization of something potential into something actual. And Jo in Japanese means to become, to complete, to accomplish. So as a verb, the compound term Ganjo means to manifest, to actualize, to appear, and become. As a noun, it refers to reality as it is actually happening in the present moment. And the meaning of the word koan, however, is more difficult to explain. So there are two different sets of kanji that are read koan in Japanese. So, for instance, koan, so in itself, koan is commonly understood as referring to a public document on the desk of government officials at a time when the Chinese emperors were sort of authoritarian, and subjects were required to accept these sort of diktats without questioning. And in the Zen tradition, people sort of use the word koan to refer to absolute truths, things that could not be questioned further. And that was essentially unchangeable. Everything can be questioned, but they were unchangeable. So the ko of the word koan means to be public. Okay. And in this context, to be public means to equalize. Because this was a sort of methodology the Chinese government officials used to use, where in sorting the problems of the public, they had to visualize themselves as equal to this member of the public and then listen to their problems accordingly and try and solve it. This comes from a Buddhist technique of meditation, equalizing. So when you write the character koan, the ko is common, but the more commonly used character for an, okay, there are two ways of writing it. Both are pronounced an, okay, with the rising a, an, okay, but it differs in the two spellings. The character use differs. So in Dogen Zenji's original text, he used the less common kanji, okay, which is he uses the shou, which is hand, the hand radical, and ne, which is the woman radical. So he uses the hand radical and the woman radical, whereas the more commonly used an is has the mian, which is the roof radical, and the mu, which is the tree radical, and typically it meant desk. And when you use the more commonly used characters for koan, it meant a practice. Okay, yet the version that Dogen has used, which has the hand radical, was sort of indicating The hand radical meant to press, to push. Okay. So in a broader sense, the meaning that he was indicating was to investigate in order to fix something that is out of order, to, in the way that a massage is given to heal the body or push things back into place. So Shohaku Okamura-san sort of looks at why did Dogen use the less commonly used character. So in Shobogenzo, he says the koan that is used is more commonly used in the Japanese. So it's possible that he did not really make a distinction, and we have to keep that into account. But he says in the beginning of the commentary by Senne, whom he'll explain, which is the oldest sort of commentary on the Genjo Koan, Senne and his disciple Kyogo define the word koan based on the kanji, that is near, and shou, saying ko means to be public, to equalize inequality, and an means to keep one's lot. Okay, so Senne's definition for the word koan is important since he lived and practiced with Dogen for many years and was in fact his direct disciple. So it's more likely that he knew, he was his jisha, his personal attendant. So it's more likely that he knew exactly what Dogen meant when he was using this radical instead of the other. Okay, so Senne in fact founded the Yokoji temple in Kyoto after Dogen Zenji's death. And with his own disciple Kyogo, he wrote the first commentary to the Shobogenzo, which is the most authoritative one. So we may therefore conclude, Okamura-san says, that Senne's definition of koan is the most likely one. So he says that an, keeping one's lot, had a very significant meaning to the people in Dogen's time, because each person in Japanese society was sort of given a role. Everything had its place. So it meant also recognizing one's place in society, in the hierarchy, in the system, in the community, in the sangha, and performing one's duties while keeping in mind the sense of community. So it means recognizing that we all have our own particular traits and that make us unique, but that we also have to fit in with the larger social network. Okay, we can't trade places with anybody else in this life, and therefore we are unique. So that used in this sense, it also means to be private, Okamura-san points out. So now you have ko, that means to be public, and you have an, which means to be private. So you have this contradiction. This very contradiction in itself is symbolic of the koan, because it is referring to the relative truth and the absolute truth. Okay, so they are in opposition to one another. So in Gosho, which is Senne's, the short version of Senne's commentary, we read koan refers to Shobogenzo itself. The word Shobogenzo means true Dharma I treasury. The treasury that in the Zen tradition is said to have been transmitted from the Buddha to the ancestors of every generation. So in other words, we can simply say that Shobogenzo is a name for the true reality of all beings. So according to Kosho, the word koan expresses the reality of our own lives. We are the intersection of equality and inequality. Reality or emptiness includes both unity and difference. And Okamura-san says he often uses the example of the hand in speaking about emptiness. We can call it hand, or we can call it a collection of 5 fingers, which again points to the significance of the hand radical in the an. As a collection of 5 fingers, each finger is independent and has a different shape and function. And we cannot exchange the little finger with the thumb because each has its own function. So, and yet from another perspective, as one hand, all 5 fingers function together and there is no separation between them. And he says each one of us can be viewed in the same way. We are both universal and individual, and the the universality and the individuality are not two separate aspects of our being. Each of them is absolute. And yet, this universe is a collection of unique individual beings, something that's very useful to remember at this time in history. These beings cannot be the same because each has its own particular time, position, and causal history. We cannot alter this reality because each and everything is completely independent. And yet, this whole world, this whole universe, and all of time from beginningless beginning to endless end are one. We cannot separate ourselves or anything else from this unity. We really all exist in only one time and one space. So we may view reality as a collection of independent beings, or we may view it as one vast, seamless whole. The fact of these two ways of viewing reality is important in Buddhist philosophy. In Mahayana Buddhist philosophy, these two aspects of the reality of life are called the two truths, absolute truth and relative or conventional truth. So he says, the Heart Sutra, for example, emptiness is considered to be the absolute truth in which there is no separation between the beings of the world. So if you read the Heart Sutra, it will tell you, for living beings, no eyes, no ears, no nose, no tongue, no hand, no nothing. Okay, there is no separation. So in this way, the whole universe is just one thing, as five fingers are just one hand. Okay, but he says that I'm not you and you are not me. When you eat food, my stomach is not filled. So in Zen, these two realities are called sabetsu, which is distinction, and pyodo, which is equality. So viewed from one side, everything is different. Viewed from another side, everything is the same. To see one reality from both sides is the fundamental viewpoint of Mahayana Buddhism, including Zen. Okay, this is expressed in the Heart Sutra as emptiness is form and form is emptiness. As form, everything is different and yet the forms are empty. Empty means no difference and yet this emptiness is form. In this way, we see one reality as an intersecting or merging of oneness and uniqueness. Okay, so he then talks about a famous piece called Sandokai, which means the merging of difference and unity, which is a traditional Zen poem composed by Zen master Shitu Shichian. The author refers to these two sides of reality as difference and unity. And in that poem, the true nature of reality is described as the merging of these two sides, with darkness representing unity and light representing discrimination. It's kind of yogic in that way, where light represents discrimination, because when it is bright outside, we can see that things have different forms, which is kind of like manifestations of Prakriti. But when it's completely dark, even those different separate things still exist, they seem as one. So light and darkness are basically two aspects of one reality. Dogen Zenji, however, said that to see one reality from two sides is not enough. He said we should also express two sides in action. Okay, so in Heart Sutra, it says form is emptiness, emptiness is form. But in Shobogenzo, Makahanya Haramitsu Dogen writes, form is form, emptiness is emptiness. Okay, in other words, when we say form is emptiness and emptiness is form, there is still separation of form and emptiness because of the dualistic nature of language. If form really is emptiness and emptiness really is form, we can only say form is form and emptiness is emptiness. Kind of reminds me of that famous anecdote of Sri Adi Shankaracharya, where it is said that while he preached Advaita, he said, I am that, separating I from that, which became duality. Kind of the same thing. So this is so because when we say form, emptiness is already there. And when we say emptiness, form is already there. So Makahanya Haramitsu Dogen writes, form is form, emptiness is emptiness. So if we understand this basic point, we can understand the first three sentences of Genjo Koan, which we will unpack in the next chapter. So the first line is, when all dharmas are the Buddha Dharma, there is delusion and realization, practice, life and death, Buddhas and living beings. The second line is, when the 10,000 dharmas are without fixed self, there is no delusion and no realization, no Buddhas and no living beings, no birth and no death. Since the Buddha way by nature goes beyond the dichotomy of abundance, this is the third line, and deficiency, there is arising and perishing, delusion and realization, living beings and Buddhas. So Okamura-san says, when we study and practice according to Dogen Zenji's teachings, it is important that we have more than just an intellectual understanding of these two aspects of reality. We should actually manifest these views with our actions. So I set the intention for all of us today that may we be able to actualize a lot of these teachings in our actions. This is an important yet difficult point that appears throughout Dogen's work. Some of you might have visited my website and sort of seen that my sessions are called Heart Like Ocean, Mind Like Sky, Body Like Mountain. These are also a koan of Dogen Zenji. So just as the cook must actualize both individual practice and community practice, all of us must aim to manifest with our own bodies and minds a personal practice that is at the same time a practice for community. We must say to ourselves, this is my own practice. No one can perform my practice for me. But we must also say this practice is actually not just for me, but for the whole community. And this is the foundation of the Bodhisattva vows. So we have to find how we attain our personal practice, but also our personal practice is useful to society, to others. If we think of ourselves only as independent persons and do not consider others, we cannot live in harmony with other people. On the other hand, if we undervalue individuality in our community, this is also unhealthy. Okay, this leads to so individualisticness, individuality can sort of make us selfish, egoistic, and also isolated. Increasingly, we're seeing that throughout the world. So we have to live together, and in order to live together, we must, in a sense, put aside our uniqueness. Now, this is this dance of duality that the Genjo Koan is kind of helping us understand how to dance, to see the whole of every situation and also see this sort of kernel of very individual and personalized truth. And Okamura-san says, this is the essential point of both the Buddha's and Dogen's teachings. In Genjo Koan, Dogen created a metaphor to express the reality of individuality and universality. When we think about reality, we tend to go to one extreme or the other. Thinking comes out of our experience, that is our karma. Depending upon our past experience, we have the tendency to think that one side of life should be more important than another, and we lose sight of reality as a whole. When we are grounded in a Zazen practice, Zazen, for those of you who don't know, means just sitting, shamatha. Each and every activity we perform in our daily lives is an opportunity to practice and awaken to the reality of the individual and the universal. This frees us from extremes. So hence, Shohaku Okamura-san gives us the meaning of Genjo Koan. According to him, Genjo is nothing other than Koan, and Koan is nothing other than Genjo. Genjo means reality actually and presently taking place, and Koan means absolute truth that embraces the relative truth, or a question that true reality asks of us. So we can say that Genjo Koan means to answer the question from true reality through the practice of our everyday activity. Very simply put, how do we attain the absolute while living in the relative? Before I go, I wanted to leave you with a very famous koan, which those of you who know the word mu or wu which in the Chinese original character is shaped like a gate. Okay. And it suggests originally Joshu's dog, or the Gateless Gate, which is a very famous collection of Zen koans that lead one's mind into higher contemplation. So the koans were basically designed as kind of riddles, if you will. So the riddle of Joshu's dog, and students were meant to sit with these. So I'll leave you with this koan. It's called Joshu's dog. And it says, has a dog Buddha nature? This is the most serious question of all. If you say yes or no, you lose your own Buddha nature. So if you want to contemplate on that, I will give you the explanation or the answer in the next episode. Thank you so much for listening. I hope this was useful to you. And please forgive my Chinese pronunciations if they went kind of all over the place. Still a student of everything. Thank you so much. Like, share, and subscribe.